Hi, and welcome to the DIY Photo Organising podcast, focusing on topics to help you with your photo management. I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Photos in Order. Hi, Fiona.
Hello, Chantal.
So, last time we talked about realistic time frames when it comes to photo organising, but that was mainly about digital photos and our 5 golden rules. So we thought we also like to cover realistic time frames for when you want to scan and digitize all media. How long does that take?
How long is a piece of string?
Oh, yeah.
No. We are going to break it down.
We are hopefully in sort of bite-sized information.
Yes.
So we basically structured it into 3 parts because with scanning, we find it's, there are 3 parts to that. It's the preparation, the actual scanning, and then what comes after the scanning. So this is how we have structured this episode, and we're going to go through all these 3 points and have a bit of a chat, what is realistically the time frame that you need to allow for that.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
Do you want to start us off? Because you are actually the scanning specialist.
I love scanning. I love it. All right. So the first part here we're talking about is the preparation. And this is a really, really important step to reduce the overall time of a project when you're looking at scanning. And the reason for that is if you do a bit of work up front in this preparation, it definitely will save you time in the actual scanning and the post scanning when you've finished scanning and you're actually doing something with them in the digital format.
Yeah.
So the types of things that I'm talking about with that preparation is, one, if the photos are in albums already, you will need to take them out. If they're in sleeves, like if they're the old albums where they slip in and slip out, you've got like a 6 to a spread, there's 3 on one side, 3 on the other. You definitely want to take photos out of albums like that because of the reflection of the little pocket that they slip into.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by preparing. So you'll need to be taking photos out of albums like that. And then you need to decide whether or not you're actually going to put them back in an album. Sometimes it's not necessary to put them back in because once they're scanned and digitized, you can just store them safely in some kind of an archival situation that we'll talk about in a moment. But you may not need to put them in some of those beautiful old family heirloom type albums. They're different. You actually don't want to, you may not want to take them out of those albums. You may want to keep them in there, and you may need to scan them in the actual album. So again, there's so many different albums out there, but looking at that ahead of time is really important. One of the things as a question that we do get asked about is those beautiful sticky albums. They're called magnetic albums. I don't know why they're magnetic. There's nothing magnetic about them, but they're, this little plastic film sleeve that sticks down to this sticky sort of residue backing, and then you slip it off and stick that photo down. Some of those photo albums, and I've scanned a lot of these, the photos either fall straight out and they've lost all their stick, or they are stuck in there. Good and stuck.
Yeah.
And unfortunately that is the case, and they can take, I'm not kidding you, 15 minutes to get one photo out.
Oh, yeah.
So crazy, because you don't want to rip it, like really delicately, and you try, the old, you try some floss, like some tooth floss, and you get it under there, and then you try peeling it back with some kind of like a little spatula, and you try, oh my gosh, the amount of different creative things that were hair dryers to loosen but I mean, really, usually the majority of the time I find in those albums the photos have lost their stick, and they just, you open the page and they're sort of falling out anyway. And there really is a highly recommend you do not put them back in those albums.
No.
So this is the opportunity to really, save those and preserve them well, get them away from that glue that's on the back of that sticky album. And just get them out of there. So that process of sort of the preparation just in taking photos out of albums, that is actually can be quite time consuming. And so even up to sort of half an hour an album, an hour an album, depending on the album, if they're all falling out, can take you 5 minutes.
Yes.
But that just sort of helps maybe a little bit on doing that. And I'd recommend, if you are doing that album by album, is just keep them all together in one. We actually use index cards to separate that. So we'll get yourself like a box, put them in the box when you get a little index card as your divider, and then put the ones that were in one album behind that divider. And most of the time back in the day when we would all photo album our photos, there was a natural progression of an event, a duration of time across a year or across, a holiday period, sort of a Thanksgiving or Christmas and New Year and those types of things, or a vacation. And so they're sort of like a natural break in those albums, usually. So
yes, right,
in that preparation, then it's really worth doing that ahead of time. So then when you come to your scanning, you really are all set up and ready to go. So the index cards are really helpful. And also have a think about the way you're going to end up with these photos in a digital photo hub. So what I mean by that is, on that index card, I always have, if I know it, the year and month or the day or the period. So you've got sort of some kind of a chronological notation about the group of photos that are behind that index card, and then maybe an event. So if it was the name of the vacation, things like that. Then that will also help you later, so that you don't blow out the time frame of this scanning process.
Absolutely. By the way, that reminds me, there is a course, the Easy Index Scanning Workflow.
Yes.
That covers exactly what you just described.
Yes, that's on our courses page. Yep. Fabulous. Yep. Absolutely. That's under Adam Pratt's details. So you'll be able to find that on his. So if you go to our courses website, and then when you get to the details of the courses that Adam's got, it's easy scanning, easy index scanning process. And it really is fabulous. It's what I use, and I highly recommend it. It's really good. Do you use the same thing too, Chantal?
Yes, I've used that too in the past. Yes.
Yeah, it really has been a great process. And, it might go into a bit more detail than maybe you need to if you're doing just your own photos, or if you've only got a few albums or negatives and things like that to do. But the year, month, and the index on the card, and then the detail of what is where they've come out of that album, if you've got a name to that, highly recommend putting all of that information on those index cards before you scan.
Yeah, and also, of course, you don't have to scan every single photo. You're allowed to throw some of them out, or decide that you only want to scan the very best and only a small selection. You don't have to do all of them. That's totally up to you. But this is also part of that step of the preparation, to become clear what you actually want to achieve in the end. What are you going to do with the remaining photos? How do you archive them and all that? What's going to happen with them? To be clear on that why and your goals helps a lot in that step as well.
Absolutely. So I really believe that within a weekend, the majority of people's family collection of printed photos and photo albums and things like that, you can prepare for the scanning process. So some have a lot more albums than others, but really just block out some chunks of time, and you can definitely grab yourself a big, a stack of index cards and start that preparation.
And also for that, when we talk, we'll talk about that later on again about archiving. But for the time being, in that preparation phase, like simple shoe boxes, that's fine to use, or any other containers that make sense to you, where you can, collect those photos and put them in temporarily. They're no good for long-term storage, but for the sorting process, that's totally fine. So you don't have to go and buy expensive stuff to do that step.
That's it. Yep. Absolutely. Just use what you've got.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now when it comes to the actual scanning part of the process, there's a lot of different options out there for you when you're doing this yourself. And we will also talk about some of the other options if you're wanting to outsource that to somebody else. But as far as scanning, there's some different methods, some different sort of equipment that you could use out there. One of the common types of ways you can scan is you can get what we call a high-speed scanner. So if you've got a lot of photos to do, it sort of feeds through and scans, and then feeds straight into and connects into your computer, and then that scans all of the images straight into your computer. And another way is to use like a flatbed type scanner, not a document scanner. We would definitely recommend that you get a specific dedicated photo scanner. And all of the scanning that we're talking about here, we recommend, which we've done in previous episodes, is at a 600 ppi quality. So if that doesn't make sense to you, do a quick Google search, have a listen to some of our other episodes. But the higher quality of the 600 for printed scans is definitely what we recommend that you print that at. You really wouldn't need more than that, but I would not recommend you go less than that for preservation of those digital files. And so then there's a few other different types of scanning up there. I use what's called a camera scanning setup, so as well, which is a even higher quality resolution, and it's a bit of a different streamlined process. And I love the colors that come out of that process, and that is a more expensive setup. So but if you've already got a digital camera, this is an option you might like to look at and really utilize some of the equipment that you already have if you love photography, and you can use that equipment depending on the lens and things like that. So if you have any questions on that specifically, shoot us through some details and a question on our email address on our website, and we'd be more than happy to answer that for you. But the scanning process can take, again, it does depend if you're using a flatbed scanner or if you're using one of those feed-through scanners. The time frame really can be very different on that. So I'm going to give you a bit of an estimate. So if you've got like a 300, one of those like I talked about before, where you slide them in and there's 3 on one side, 3 on the other, flip, you've got 300 photos in an album. So the time that it takes to to take them all out, do the scanning, can be about an hour, an hour and a half. It doesn't have to be a long time, and that's just one album. So, and then that's really not doing much work after that, as far as, when the colors are already in the scan, and you don't need to do much post-production sort of work. Then really realistically, you can just sort of set a few blocks aside like that and get an album done. And just get them all digitized. So that's definitely one option as far as the types of scanners that you can use. If you're looking at doing your negatives and slides as well, then that's also something to consider in the way that you're going to do your scanning, and what equipment you're going to need to look for to buy. And again, depending on if you're using a camera scanning setup, you can do slides and negatives on that. If you are using a feed-through scanner, then you need to look at what features it has and if you're able to also do slides and negatives. So you just really want to make sure ahead, when we go back to our preparation, with your why and what your goal is and what you've got to do, and then have a look at purchasing that equipment.
Yeah, and depending on where you are, you can possibly, sometimes you can even hire scanning
Yep.
equipment. You don't have to buy a scanner. And don't forget, even if you buy one, and yes, they don't come very cheap, depending on which one you get. But once you've done your project, it's normally a once off. You can actually resell them.
Yep.
So, in the end, the price might not be as bad as it looks at first, possibly.
Yeah.
Or you can,
Or buy a second-hand one
yeah,
even,
yes, yeah.
and from someone quality that you know if you've got any
Mm.
issues, you can have that attended to if you need to.
And there's always the option too that you find your local photo organizer and you outsource that step. If you do want to outsource anything, the scanning is probably the easiest step to outsource.
Yeah, and again, you can save on money with that if you do that preparation work ahead of time. So if
Hmm.
someone's organizing the photos ahead of time before the scanning and you've got
Hmm.
those index cards there and all the photos sort of, you've got some order to that,
Hmm.
then the scanning really is an easier process.
Yeah.
It's what I call scan ready. Those photos are scan
Hmm.
ready, and then whoever it is that's doing the scanning for you just scans. They have, maybe you can
Mm.
request that they get put in the folder of the index card, the name that's on that
Yeah.
index card, and then you get them back.
Yeah.
And it really can reduce the costs, and
Mm.
also just allow you to be able to move through this process a lot quicker.
Yeah. And it is a time question oftentimes with the scanning. I've set up clients that wanted to do the scanning themselves with flatbed scanners, for cost reasons because they're a lot cheaper than the feed scanners, the high
Hmm.
speed scanners. They come at it's got a bit of a higher price tag usually.
Yep.
Um, but then the flatbed is the most time consuming thing you can do. And it's
Yes.
not difficult, but it does take time. So I sometimes say, okay, I can show you how to do that on the flatbed, and the scanner costs so and so much, and then you do it yourself. Or, as you call it, the scan ready, if you give me a pile of those, I can scan in the high speed scanner. We can scan up to between 300 and 400 prints in an hour.
Yep.
So that gives you a bit of an idea, how fast these things are, and that saves you from going to get one and spending all those hours to scan and to learn a new tool and whatnot. So it might be worth thinking about outsourcing that step.
Yeah,
I think, yeah.
absolutely. The other thing to consider when you're looking at scanning too with those, with a flatbed or the high speed scanner, when you're doing it yourself, is the larger style, photos that are,
Mhm.
are not going to fit in those feed
Mm.
through
Yeah, yeah.
scanners. So that's definitely something that you'd need to consider your options for. And it may be that you end up with just a smaller selection of photos that you get some help with,
Mhm.
and take them to someone locally that you can get them to
Yeah,
scan them for
yeah,
you. Mm.
yeah. That's pretty much what happens a lot of the time, I find.
Yeah. Yep.
Because we all have a mix of, those 80s and 90s photos. They're easy to go in a high speed, but like older ones and fragile ones, or photos that are stuck to a glass frame that we can't take out without ripping
Yep.
them, these take a specialist. And as you say, I can do everything myself and outsource a little bit for those tricky ones.
Yep.
And then you've got it done.
Yeah. So then that brings us to the last part of the scanning process, which is your post production. So it's your
Mm.
post scanning. So once the digital file has been created, then you need to sort of have a think about what else might need to happen to that, which can take time. And that does depend on which process you've used
Mm-hmm.
and what is needed for the quality of the scan. Because the whole point in going to take the time and the expense to do a job like digitizing these old
Mm.
precious photos is that you just really want to do it once. You don't
Yes.
want to have to do it again. And so I really recommend that you just have a think about which way you're going to do it and what you're going to use and
Yeah.
how that end result is, because unfortunately I've seen this, I'm sure you have too, Chantel, where, people have come to you and they have had a go at it themselves and the quality is not great, and
Yes, yes.
it's they just, yeah, have to do it again, and
Yeah, that
it's time
actually,
consuming.
yeah, reminds me of something I meant to mention before when you talked about scanners and the camera scanning. So we're not talking about camera scanning using your phone.
No, no, no,
Because
no.
that will end up in bad quality. We've
100%.
tested these things. They look good oftentimes on the phone screen, but we also have done comparisons, and yeah, they can't hold up. It's, if you go through the trouble to preserve those photos, do it properly and do it once.
Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's a bit
Absolutely.
blunt, but
No, it's true.
yeah.
It is. Yeah, that's what we're here. We're here to give the tough love.
Yeah.
Say it as it is. So, that post production part is the types of things I'm talking about there. If you've done, maybe you need to crop your photos, which means if you've used maybe the flatbed scanner or if you've used a camera and you've got some extra backing or something like that, even if, like I was talking about previously with the photos that are the older photos that you're going to keep in an album,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps,
Mm-hmm.
that are too delicate to take out, then you will need something like a flatbed or a camera scanner, a digital camera, to be able to capture those safely. But then there's a bit of cropping work that you need to do. You might like that white border on the outside, or you might like to crop that out. There's different options for that. Also, if you've got negatives and slides, you might need some color correcting on those. Maybe some of those old photos where you've got that yellow tinge that unfortunately, orangey color that 60s, 70s, 80s
Yeah.
photos. Unfortunately, like, there's a whole era of these photos that are just
Yeah.
orange. And so there's brilliant software out there that you can bring those colors back to life again,
Yeah.
and easily, really not in a difficult way. You can group batch a lot of that, but it's just important to be able to be aware that these things take time.
They do, yes. Yeah.
And so to be aware of that. And again, it comes with practice, is as far as how to do that, but a little bit of learning on the software that you're using. And you can do that post sort of production work. The other thing that can take time in this process is when you decide if you're going to keyword the photos, and you've got to add the keywords in, and also if you're going to redate any photos. So that's something else that you might want to look at as far as time goes when you're putting these into your photo hub.
Yeah, that's the thing, they flowing into your digital photo hub.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
absolutely. So the last part of that is really in that post-production is what you're going to do with them. Are you going to archive them? You're going to put them into some nice archive quality material, so then you can put them away safely and then just work with and enjoy the digital photos. That's really the benefit, where you can share them with others, you can create some beautiful pieces, and have those memories live on.
That's right. And again, it depends in terms of how much time these things take. It really is very individual depending on what you want to do with them. I mean, if you want to put them in an archival box and not label anything, you're done in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But if you want to make it look nice and have the labels and the divider cards and all that, labeled the same way as you've got them in your digital archive, that takes some extra time. But it's not like it's going to take you a week. It might take you, I don't know, a couple of hours or so, again, depending on the process, software you're using. You can make things, automate things. It really depends a lot on technology as well. And also, I've scanned for a client. We've scanned heaps of albums, and they're old, precious albums, and the photos were taken out for scanning, but they actually go back into the album, and the albums are going to be shipped to a new, different keeper of the family photos. which all takes time,
Yeah.
and taking photos out is usually faster than putting them back into, especially if they're old albums, like they've got the photo corners.
Mm.
So some of them need to be replaced because some fell out. So this is going to take time, right? So there, the hours just go.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So
And I mean,
yeah,
even if you sort of look at all of the different albums you've got,
yeah,
think a couple of hours per album. And I've seen photo albums that
mm,
have one photo per page, and I've
mm.
seen them where they have 12 of those little square
Yes, yes, yeah,
of per page. So it really could be a whole range of the
yeah,
number of photos in an album.
yeah.
But yeah, this process is not a quick and easy one. Sorry, it's not a quick one
Yes,
necessarily. It's
yes.
easy. It's not that difficult. It just
No.
needs some planning
Yeah,
and some
yeah.
prep and the right equipment
Mm,
and a one-time deal. Think of it that way.
yeah.
And it is an investment. It's an investment of your time
Mm,
and some finances, depending on which way you go
mm-hmm,
about doing it,
mm-hmm.
but well worth it. Everyone that I've talked to that have either
Yeah,
done it themselves or outsourced are
yeah.
really glad that they've done that. And once it's done, it's
It's
done.
done. That's what I
Yeah.
love about the scanning. And can I just say that even as a professional photo organizer, I don't have the whole equipment. I have some scanners, but Fiona is much better with she's into camera scanning, and she's actually scanned some albums and negatives for me recently, and they've come out so well. Just love it.
Oh,
And so
wonderful.
even as a pro, we outsource things because there's
Yes.
someone out there who can do it better than I can do
Yeah.
it. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't I? And the quality is just amazing. I'm so
Yeah.
glad I've
It's good. The
invested in
colours are
that.
gorgeous.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, yeah. No,
That's
totally worth it.
wonderful.
And it's a once
Oh,
off, as we
good.
say. You do it
Exactly.
once.
Yep.
And then it's done.
Yep.
Finished.
That's so true.
We
That's good.
finished
Well,
too.
yes, I think we have. Well, that's great. I think it's, hopefully it's just sort of given a bit of some realistic time frames on that whole area of scanning
Yeah.
some old media. And thanks for joining us. And as always, please leave us a review or ask any questions. If you've got feedback, email us or get in touch via our social media channels. And also have a look at those courses that we were talking about on our website and just see what might be available and a good fit for you. And I'm Fiona from Photo Helper.
And I'm Chantal from Photos in Order. Thanks, as always, for tuning in, and happy photo organising. Bye.
Bye.